adventure there. I hope the sound and the images went okay. And I cannot tell you how delighted I am about today's discussion. I stumbled in. I forget how I met Robbie Hutter, but when I found out what he was doing with senior living communities and creating these unique theater programs, I knew that I had to share this with the world. And so, Robbie, if you want to join me on stage, we can have a little discussion, and then we are going to be meeting some of
There we go.
the players there. Robbie, just out of curiosity, could you hear and see me when I was running around the community?
I could up until maybe the last 10 seconds
Oh,
you went
perfect.
away.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
I think
miracle.
I think I think you have a career as a tour guide, a backup career
Wow.
of a
Wow. I can't
that was
believe I
fun.
pulled that off. So anyways, we got to try new and different things. And that theme of trying new and different things is really at the spirit of this project that you've been leading. Is I've never heard of anything like this. Now, we've all heard of having productions and theater productions in senior living communities, but
Mhm.
we're going to learn today what makes this one unique is the stories of the actors' lives who are the residents in the community is actually how you created the script. But before we
Mhm.
dive into this any deeper, let's get to know you a little bit better and find out what inspired you to play around with this unique idea.
Sure. Well, so my inspiration grew or was born, I think, in 1984 when I was in DC for a short visit. I saw the work of Liz Lerman and her Dance Exchange, and I saw, people in their 60s and 70s, which to me at that time that was very old. Now that I'm there myself, it's not quite that old. And I saw them being escorted and lifted across the stage dancing with young people. And it was one of those seminal moments I was having in life that I didn't know was a seminal moment, which then impacted upon the rest of my life, where I got a job through Temple University in Philly as artistic director of an intergenerational theater company. And I did that for 12 years. And so starting Philly's Senior Stage, which is the current incarnation of my work with senior adults, it was a no-brainer. Well, actually, it was a bit of a no-brainer. For a minute, I thought at the ripe old age of 50, I was having a midlife crisis going, how do I make money as a theater artist? And I went back to school to start working as a high school teacher. Tripped up and ruined my back during an exercise. And then in physical therapy with a lot of older adults, I'm listening to them tell stories, and the light bulb went on. The epiphany happened where it was, why am I going at this stage of life to work with young people? Work with the age that you're growing into. And that started Philly Senior Stage. And really, it's been an incredible ride ever since. So at just before the pandemic, I had about 15 theater companies or programs in retirement communities. Each theater program had between 9 and 25 players. And the beautiful thing about working with older adults was that they were there because they wanted to be there, as opposed with kids who kind of have to show up because my parents have sent me or it's in my school curriculum. And that when people want to be gathered in the same room together, I mean, it's so easy from there. And I tried a lot of different formats for creating theater. Music was not at the beginning a key, but it became the glue for most of the productions that I've created in the last 17 years, and particularly music that people are familiar with. And what I discovered was it was a great marriage of my love of Broadway and the fact that for the great generation, as you know, they are aging now and passing, Broadway music was their pop music. I mean, every person born in that generation knew "You'll Never Walk Alone" from Carousel or "The Hills Are Alive" from The Sound of Music. So what I started to do was create these Broadway, these shows were snippets of different Broadway shows, and I would create a compilation show for the seniors to do. And they were about an hour long, and I went from Broadway to television hits to radio shows, stuff that folks were familiar with. Which, as I have been aging and wanting to look back on my life and look at what are the threads of my life and what does my life mean back then and what does it mean now, I started to do my own life history, and I realized, whoa, what is my purpose in the next period of my life? And I realized that the process would also be valuable for my folks in my 15 retirement communities. So I started a project of collecting people's life histories and then, lifting them up into performative theatrical art.
I love
in
it.
a nutshell.
I love it. And we're going to meet three of those, three of the people in one of the productions at Masonic Village in Lafayette, Pennsylvania. But what an amazing idea. And now what I think we're going to do is I think it's a good time to transition, and let's meet some of those performers. What do you think, Robbie?
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
Okay. The stars of the show, should we speak? So hopefully, yep, there we go. It worked. All right.
Hey, guys.
Two successes. Hello. Okay. So Robbie, how about you introduce the three people that we have on the screen, and then let's get to know them a little bit better.
With pleasure. So we have, and I don't know if I should say to your left or right. I guess it depends on where you are on the screen.
Let's start in the center.
Let's start in the center. So June, you want to wave your hand there? June is June Knight. She is, as they all are, residents of Masonic Village. To June's left, my right, is Eileen. Hey, Eileen. And to June's right is Chuck.
I love
Chuck.
It. Yeah. All right. So
and to give you just a little background, I started the program at Masonic Village in 2007. It was the first of the retirement community projects that I created. And just like all of the ones that I created then, we're still going strong. How many years later is it? 16, 17 years later. So they are the younger generation of the folks. We've seen quite a few people come and go in the program, and they are my latest beauties.
Huh. Okay.
And now they are three of about 14 players that we've had, although we've just had 10 in this previous production, in the production that we're now presenting now.
Okay. And then I just want to make sure that okay. So Kathy in the audience said she can only see me and Robbie. Kathy, choose gallery view in the upper right hand corner of your screen, and then you should be able to see all people on the screen because everybody else can see those. So again, little technical things that we've got here, and she's good to go. Okay, now she can see everybody. Okay, well, so here's what I think we should do. Robbie, let's start you kind of like talking about from start to finish how a production like this is put together, and then I'd love to get feedback from our resident actors there. But before you before we do that, just I would love for the three of you to just give us a comment on have any of you been involved in theater before you were doing this?
I have not been involved in theater since I was in 8th grade, and I have only been here not even 2 years yet, but I've been in 3 of Robb's productions, and I'm certainly enjoying it.
Oh, great. How about the others?
We used to have school plays in elementary school from grades 1 through 8. You all had your little thing to do. And after that, it was like, oh, no, I'll sing, but I won't do any acting.
And Chuck?
Not me. I was doing something sort of like being an actor. I was a professional teacher. And a lot of the things you do as a teacher translates well into acting.
There you go.
Oh yeah, yeah, especially improv
God,
when you're a teacher. All right, great. Well, we're going to get to know you all. Well, actually, before we dive into
Mhm.
that, tell us a little bit about how long each of you have lived there at Masonic
Village.
at Masonic Village, and how you like it.
Okay, well, I'll tell you. Well, we came here 3 years ago, or it will be 3 years on July 1st. We had been living down in Florida and enjoying the good life there for another 12 years, and before that at the beach. So anyway, it was time to come home and be closer to family. And so that's when one of my daughter-in-laws started researching all the different communities in the area, and we came up for a visit to all of them. So
Great,
love
great.
it.
And how about the other two?
Well, my daughter and granddaughter were living with me after my husband passed away 6 years ago. And my daughter wanted to get her own place. She didn't like being in her childhood bedroom anymore. So I made her a deal she couldn't resist, and she bought my house, and I came here.
Oh, I love it.
I've made the right choice because I'm enjoying the activities and the people, very nice people.
I'm here probably the longest. When September 1st rolls around, it'll be 8 years.
Wow.
I've seen a lot of things, people come and go. I came here because I didn't want to be lonely any longer. I want to meet nice people like we have here.
I love it. This is great. Okay, Robbie, let's
Yeah.
sort of you
Yeah.
start it wherever how this
Sure.
process works.
Sure. Well, the process. This was when I worked with this group from Masonic Village. This was the second time that I did this process, and it was just the learning was extraordinary. I learned so much from the folks that I was serving and that I was creating the show with. I guess I could break it down into 4 or 5 stages, Steve. The first stage was I knew this was a project that was different from any other project, because with any other project I did with the group, I would hand them a script and it was created for them, and I would assign them roles and they would play someone who was not themselves. So the unique feature about this one is this was all them. And this was going to be their stories that were going to be shared publicly. So the first stage of this process was to get the buy-in of the group. And that was each of the stages of putting the show together had its easy points and its challenges. Because some of the members of the group had never journaled before, or maybe told stories to other people, or shared private things with a group. There was, what I wanted when I said, hey, we're going to do your life histories and put them on stage. I wanted everybody to be, yeah, let's do it. And I sort of was met by, really? Okay, I'll try to be open. And so it was a challenge at the beginning because there was no model. I didn't have a model for what this could actually look like, although intuitively I knew that it was going to be pretty freaking powerful. So then I would say that the next phase was eliciting the stories. I gave journals to everybody in the. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are the 3 of you, did any of you sort of fit that model when Robbie shared with you what you were doing, that it was sort of like, you're kidding me?
I did not think it was going to be good up to the very last day before the performance. I thought, oh, I could not believe how well received it was when we did it.
I had faith in Robbie. I think you pulled it off, and he did.
Well, you did.
And I was, and that faith did get worn thin a little bit as we rolled on into the next stages.
Okay.
But go ahead. And Eileen, what was it for you?
Well, when we were gathering each other's stories, we'd write them down and then we would share them in a group. And as I started to listen, I thought, oh my God, I'm in a therapy group, for heaven's sake. A lot of the stories aren't stories that I'd want to be sharing with the world. So, but it was a fun experience right from the start.
Yeah.
I love it.
So the eliciting the stories, I had to balance, I guess, process and product. In other words, I knew I had to keep ensuring that there would be some safety in the group created as we were sharing our stories. So what I did was I actually, and I will certainly do a shout out to Joy Riley, whose book was a manual for me called Age on Stage, Life Writing Your Monologue. I used the structure of Joy's book. She broke down the chronology of our lives into 6 or so chapters. We would talk and each week I would come to the group with a list of questions pertaining to that moment in their lives. So the first week or two, we looked at their family history. Where do they come from? The ancestors, their family home, their grandparents. Then we moved chronologically to their childhoods, to the games that they played, the teachers that they had, the accidents they had, sicknesses. We then rolled into teenager years, and of which some of that will be expressed in the little demonstration that we're going to do in a few minutes, into falling in love, first love, longer term romance, working career lives, and then through later life and up to this very last chapter that we're in as older adults. So I gave them some prompts every week. They would take 15 or so minutes to answer one of 6 or 7 or 8 questions about that particular stage. And they would put it in their book. And then afterwards, people would share their responses or the parts of it that they wanted to share aloud. That was part of creating the safety, was that people did not have to share everything that they wrote. So they didn't have to share that aloud in the small group, and they certainly didn't have to perform that in front of the audience.
And did out of curiosity, how many actors? We've got 3 here, but how many total actors were there in the production?
12.
I think, guys, I need your help. I think there were 10
in the beginning.
In the
beginning, I mean, we had several people drop out because we must have had 12 or 14 to begin with.
So
yes.
Okay, so this was a real
with 10 stayed with it.
Collaborative process. And Robbie, you talked about sort of revealing personal things. Did you find out of the 10 core actors that there were some people that just wanted to share everything and then others that were a little bit more guarded?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I could even amongst the 3 of you, there was a story, a couple of stories that, okay, so just to share a little bit more of the process, I collected all of their journals after about 10 or so weeks. And then I dictated their stories into Microsoft Word on my computer. And then from there, I really created the script.
Wow.
And I shared in the script one of the stories that I didn't realize had been marked as please don't share. And one of the actors said, it really took care of herself and said, I don't want this to be shared in public. So that was okay. Awesome. Got it. And we did not include that in the show.
Well, I tell you, there's probably, and I'll ask our actors this one, regardless of whether there was a production or not, it was probably pretty therapeutic. How often did y'all meet? Weekly?
Once a week in the beginning, and towards the end, twice a week.
Yeah, but probably something just therapeutic, being in a room with 10 people and you're all kind of sharing your lives. You probably got to know each other a lot better than you knew each other.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And can I just jump in there, Steve, to mention that it would be interesting to compare what doing this process would be like not in a retirement community with the retirement community, because these guys live with each other, they eat with each other, they bowl with each other, they play ping pong and
Scrabble and
go to,
pinochle.
yes, with each other. So revealing their stories really was an act of bravery on some level, because again, this is their new family on their community.
I love it.
So I would imagine, and you guys can answer this, was there this element of, gee, I don't know if this is something I want to write down?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yes.
I wrote down one or two that I told you not to use.
Now, how long from starting making the announcement and recruiting actors to the production, what type of time span are we talking about?
4 months.
January to May.
January to May. And only imagine if oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't tell you were speaking. Go ahead.
Oh, what I was going to say is that when you dictated all of these journals, it must have been volumes of information that you had to sort of sort through to create.
He had a job to do.
Yeah. I had to sort of leave the group for a couple of weeks there, and just sort of hole myself into my office and edit. And
now, out of curiosity, Robbie, have you ever written a script prior to doing this, like where you wrote a play yourself?
Well, I'm not a playwright by profession or training. I've created shows in which I've worked as an entertainer in retirement communities and done plays myself, yes. But to write and in essence, I wasn't writing this show.
No, they really wrote the script.
Right.
You're
but
organizing
I will give myself a lot of credit for the way that I crafted the piece and the way that I, cut down the stories, identified themes, grouped the stories by the themes. And I also want to mention that a key component for the process was the music.
Oh, definitely.
We explored, so the way we went through the show was chronologically based on their lives. So the eldest member was born in 1927. And what I did was I sprinkled sort of their stories with headlines from the different years that they were born, or pop music from their childhood, from their teenage years. What was the love song that they danced at their wedding, or the lullaby that they sang to their children? So I used snippets of songs throughout the whole show that became just as important as the snippets of stories that were shared also, and headlines from the different years. So we explored World War II and how many of them had memories from World War II. We even went back to the stock market crash of 1929 with our eldest member. We looked, at when JFK was assassinated, when 9/11 hit. Where were we all? And there are moments in our lives that we all know where we were, because they were either traumatic moments collectively, where grief was shared, and boy, do we all remember where we were and what our feelings were. So,
man, I love it. Well, our audience has got a few questions already. Elaine asks, were the scripts memorized, or did they read the scripts off pieces off paper?
Well, since we wrote the stories, we pretty much knew what we were talking about. We did have a script in front of us to refer to, but we tried to tell it from our own words.
I love it. And just folks, in a little bit, they're gonna do a little snippet of the script. And obviously they've got that printed out in front of them because it's not the full production, but it'll give you a taste of how it was put together. And Zaja,
can I just jump into that question? Because we had a live piano accompanist with us, it had to be quite scripted in that there was always a line that would be the cue line for the pianist to come in. As I mentioned, I was very heavy on the music. The music was equal portion to the stories. So there would be a line such as, "And it felt really wonderful holding my baby." And that would be a cue for "baby face. You've got the cutest little baby face." And so then that would drive forward into the next story, which then would drive into some snippet of music.
I love it. All right. So you gather all these stories, you lock yourself up in your apartment, and you draft up a script. Then what happens next?
Well, then what happens is, I'm sorry, were you speaking, John?
What was that?
Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse.
Yeah. And the rehearsals were a sort of different kind of challenge. I think as we get older, we become quite more visual than auditory. And these shows, because they were telling stories, there really wasn't moving, or as we call it, moving on stage, or in theater, we refer to it as blocking. So there wasn't anything to block. I just had them sitting on stools or chairs, presenting their story. It was very, very intimate. I hugged them in real close, and I pulled all the chairs up in the auditorium, again, kind of like in a semicircle, to really create a sense of community, so that there are the real spirit of sharing stories. So the challenge we had was, how do we just sound very conversational about what we're sharing, and yet we got to play to the back of the room, because this is theater. We're in a space that, is an auditorium. And so that work was something I needed to work with on the actors, even though it was their story. How do you share it now beyond the 7 or 8 or 10 of us in the small circle with the 70 or 80 that are now gathered in the room? So, yeah.
Cool. This is now for our actors, when he presented you this first script, you hear all these stories about these famous actors in Hollywood. They get a script and then they're sort of like, well, I'm not doing this. Was there any resistance, and or did you all say, oh, this is wonderful, this is what I'm going to do, and that's the way that you went?
Mine was fine, but I think some other people made changes to theirs.
No problem. Not much did I want.
Okay. Did you have any folks making changes, Robbie, or requesting to make changes?
Just not so much changes in what was written, but sharing. Like Eileen, you decided that you didn't want a particular story shared, so we just pulled it out. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's rehearsals, and what does that look like? I mean, I know that my daughter has been in high school productions, and it's like they're rehearsing every single day. But were you able to do this with the 1 to 2 week rehearsals? And I imagine our actors there, you're probably practicing your lines at home and by yourself.
A little bit.
I didn't know we were supposed to.
Yeah, I think the rehearsals actually, for my process, they were the easiest part, because sort of like the work had been created, the art was there, the work was created, the stories were very, very rich. So I think we only had maybe 7 or 8 rehearsals. Almost all of them were with the piano accompanist, because again, the music was helping drive the show along.
We really had to rehearse, because we hadn't done anything with that. We really needed to do that with her to get that right.
Yeah,
the music piece.
I love it. So now I'm just trying to visualize the timeline. So this started in January. When would you say around the time that you had the finished script?
So let's say that the end of February, beginning of March, I picked up their journals and spent 2 weeks creating what I call the first draft. Mm-hmm. What a playwright needs is to hear his or her words spoken. And that's what actors do at the beginning of a rehearsal process. So I needed to hear to see what the flow was like. Where was the flow working? Where was it not? Where was it impeded by the writing? Too many stories? The length of the stories? Where was it impeded because maybe an actor wasn't reading it fluently? So there was a 2 or 3 week period where we just kept reading it over a couple of times, and I would make some revisions to create a final draft.
So I'd say like half of the process here, that is these meetings where it's the discovery and the stories, and then
group therapy, as they were calling it.
Yeah, group therapy, and then a little break for you to create the first draft, and then it's rehearsal and adjustment time, and leading into the production in May. So how many times did you perform this?
Just once. But we have been requested to perform it again, and we're looking forward to doing that in July.
Oh, wow.
So now we get to share the most phenomenal thing that happened after we performed this show. So, of course, like actors in any show anywhere in the world, they're nervous. How are we going to be received? Well, they did the show, and, we struggled in rehearsals. The timing wasn't always right. People were missing lines, even though they had scripts. But I could feel, during the show that we had a hit. So what happened after the show, I jumped up on stage with them to, take my bows, and as did the pianist and the sound guy and all of the support people. And the audience didn't frickin' move. They sat
They did.
And looked at me and looked at the actors, and not a word. You could hear a pin drop. Now, we're talking about retirement communities where the golden rule is after 1 hour, people's bladders need emptying, and you don't go longer than an hour. And this audience did not get up. And I just looked back at them and I said, show's over. And they just looked back at me. And it was the most, really.
And then
it
a
was
couple jumped up and said it was the best show they ever saw.
That's great. Now, when you say they didn't move, they reacted during the play and they applauded at the end, correct?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. They had tears rolling down their cheeks.
Okay, great. I was going to say, so that is amazing. And primarily, these are your fellow neighbors there at Masonic Village. So now, not only did you all share with each other in the therapy session, now they're experiencing the sharing through this art. And I bet you anything that now when you bump into these folks that were in the audience, they know a lot more about you, but they may probably reminisce about some of the things that you shared on stage.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting what ended up happening was some of the audience, we stayed for about 10 or 15 minutes afterwards. And we started singing songs from the play. I asked Denise to get to the piano and let's just have a sing along with the audience. This showed the power that theater has of creating community is really, really.
I love it. I love it.
And people also started reminiscing in their minds, like, oh wow, I remember when I got married and was scared to show up to the altar, and people triggered people's own memories and the songs. You could also see the audience members singing the songs with you guys. They were mouthing the words.
Wow. Well, I think this is a great segue to now reveal a little bit of that script. What do you think, Robbie?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I'll let you direct.
What we did was I took some maybe 45 pages of script and I reduced it to 4, just so that our audience could get a feel for the flavor of the show. So of course we're working without a piano accompanist, and we're having 3 people on Zoom in the same space. So let's give it a fly and have fun, you guys.
Okay. By the time I was 14, I was ready to give up my dollies and toys and turn my attention to Eddie Fisher. He was my favorite boyfriend. He was handsome with beautiful wavy curls in his hair, but Liz Taylor wanted to marry him too. Phooey.
Harry Grant had the cutest dimple in his chin. Oh, you made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. You made me want you. And all the time you knew it. And all the time you knew it.
My early teen years were rough. You're in between, you know. Your body's changing and you don't know what's going on.
Mother handed me a box of tampons and a book about sex.
I hated being fat.
And I hated being shy. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine.
On November 22nd, 1963, I was in my backyard painting a piece of furniture when my neighbor came out with a shocking announcement.
President Kennedy has been shot in Dallas, Texas.
I watched the funeral on TV. Jackie was holding John John's hand as he saluted his father's coffin with his other hand. I could not get that image out of my mind. I was working at Bell Telephone at the time, and I just was sickened by what happened, and I could not go back to work for a full month.
The 60s were a turbulent time in our country.
A little like the challenges we're facing today.
But we're survivors. We made it through them, and we'll do it again.
I see trees of green and red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of the people going by. I see friends shaking hands saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you.
I'm grateful to live here in the Masonic Village.
I'll say, why, just yesterday, I had coffee clatch at 10:30, chair exercises at 12:45, trivia with Jeopardy at 2 p.m., Scrabble at 3 p.m. Then I had some company over for wine at 5 p.m., pinochle at 7. And when we finished pinochle, I went down to hall to where they're doing the jigsaw puzzle and had conversations with my friends till bedtime.
She makes me tired just listening to her.
I'll have what she's drinking.
I want my epitaph to read that her smile will be missed.
And that she was courageous and loving.
That he made us laugh.
If young people were to ask my advice, I'd tell them, be yourself. Be who you are and not who you think someone else wants you to be.
I'd say to them, never give up. Quitters never win, and winners never quit.
Know what's important. Take care of those you love.
And for heaven's sakes,
enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. Enjoy yourself while you're feeling the pink. The years go by as quickly as a wink. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think.
Wow. Oh man, that was really cool. And you know, what's interesting, this is a little inside baseball. Before we came on the discussion, Robbie printed out the script, the section that he wanted. He said, I want you all to run through this. And it was like, I mean, Robbie, you're like, if they cast a movie of a director, you fit the role perfectly. He was interrupting them and he needs, hey, you know, do this, do that. And what's amazing is, I mean, that performance there on Zoom, scrunched in to get on the camera together, was just wonderful.
Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it.
It was fun.
It was fun.
This is great. And so what we got a little glimpse there. So each of those little stories that the scripts that you were reading, those are real experiences. And I imagine, did you have a hand at picking out the songs that you were singing as well?
And he suggested, but there were so many. For instance, when we were talking about when what we watched on television when we were children, and we sang the Mickey Mouse song, MICKEYMOUSE. The audience loved it. I mean, it's not something you hear every day.
Yeah, yeah. You would look and see people in the audience who would be singing. They weren't singing out loud, but they would be mouthing the words as you were singing the songs.
Yeah.
There's something.
You know, it's almost like, even though it was their particular stories, your particular stories, guys, you were also telling the story of the people in the audience. You were telling their stories too. Mm-hmm. You mentioned June, and you had that line of my mother handed me a box of tampons and a book about sex.
I bet that happened.
Well, how many of us did not get how many of us, my parents gave me the sex talk already after I had it. It was a little late, right? So, but those stories make everyone think of their own story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, well, if you read the chat there, and I'm going to send a copy of it to all of you so you can see it. Everybody is just really enjoying this discussion, and I knew that this would. I mean, this should be sort of the way that all senior living communities think about different activities, where you're drawing from the experience of the residents and then using it to encourage more people to connect and bring people together and just recognize how unique and different and alike we all are.
And Steve, what's really interesting is when I started doing theater for senior adults in retirement communities, I was all gung-ho about the theater piece of it. And at the end of every production, I have a meeting with the group to a kind of a debriefing or evaluation. And my first question that I ask them is, what aspect did you enjoy most about this project? And what I would get 85% of the time was the camaraderie. And I remember in my early days, I was really pissed at that. I wanted to hear that they wanted to be great performers, and that it was the performative aspect of it. And I was frankly projecting my own needs at the time. And then, but what I've come to learn over time is how important that sense of belonging is, and connection and community, something that I myself am now searching for much, much more deeply as I'm getting older. So I really see that, and what this show did was, it created community extraordinarily. And it was no surprise to any of us that afterwards that the activity director contacted me and said, we got to do the show again.
Oh,
so
we're
scheduled for July.
I was going to ask now, out of curiosity, and where I could see this going in some other directions is, I could see the performance leaving the Masonic Village and like going to a school or a senior center or something like that. But I mean, I know these actors are going to start negotiating for paychecks and things like that.
There you go.
But I think you're right. I mean, there are groups of seniors who are singers, etc., who do that, just that sort of thing. And I think this is really very, very special.
But I guess,
oh, wow, a group.
Say it again.
Well, it's great because you see older people sharing their lives as opposed to lecturing younger people on how they should live theirs. Right?
Yeah. So. If you compared, like, for whatever reason, Bye Bye Birdie is stuck in my head, that you brought these 10 people together as you had done earlier and did just a scripted musical theater versus this process. At the end of Bye Bye Birdie, they said, hey, the camaraderie is what we really enjoyed. But now they get the camaraderie, but it's built on them all sharing and revealing their own lives. So, Robbie, do you feel like the camaraderie is even stronger with a production like this?
The camaraderie between the group members.
Yeah.
You know what? That I can't answer. They would have to answer because they live there.
Yeah.
I just,
well,
what do you guys think?
So have you all done productions with Robbie that weren't like this one before?
I've done 2 others,
but not like this one.
No, not like this one.
So did you find that this was that the camaraderie amongst the actors and the residents was stronger on this one than those previous ones because you were going through this process of sharing and revealing?
There probably was some stronger, although I just always found the camaraderie was good even with the other shows, but this one was a little stronger.
We got to know each other better from from
each other well.
Experiences. Yeah.
And everybody in the audience got to know you a little bit better. Yeah. So this is great. So the next performance is going to be in July.
Yes.
July 13th.
And it'll be at night. We did it in the afternoon before, so most of our families were not able to come, but we're going to be doing it in the evening. So we'll be having outside people come in to see us too.
Well, I may have to look at my calendar because this might be something that I need to pay a visit to. That is, if there's an extra ticket available, I might have to volunteer as an usher to see this.
You might. Yeah, they're running hot for tickets.
Steve, no problem.
In fact, yeah, June is. These gals are amazing cooks, so maybe we could even get you a little dinner in there beforehand.
Man, that would be a lot of
cook anymore. Not really. Only meatballs.
That would be awesome. Well, I'm looking at the clock and we're winding down to the top of the hour. Anything about this whole process that you all would like to share or reveal? And any, like, for your friend, for people that might be watching this that are in other retirement communities, any sort of thoughts on trying to replicate this type of process with Robbie?
I think the whole process was wonderful, that, from start to finish. I wonder if we could just hit on other topics maybe that would allow us another opportunity to do some of the same, but with, maybe with different experiences,
different things highlighted.
Yeah. And it was easy in some respects. It was easy to not think of it as a script that you were writing, but because it was yours, that, even though it wasn't something that Robbie wrote down, you'd say it anyway because it was your story.
It was easier to have the words to come out the way you wanted them to than to have to memorize, because memorizing is getting a little more difficult each year.
Yeah, but this is just a great, one of the things is that our minds are a muscle that needs to be exercised. And true. I can really see how this process is great. They're great brain games, memorizing a script.
Yeah. And as I just heard what Eileen just said, we could do another life history show, but we could maybe take themes from life, like dreams, and create, what are our dreams? What were our dreams? What are our, like, we could take so many themes and create something original based on your life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
They got the bug, Steve. They're addicted.
No. Well, and Elaine in the audience is saying a traveling troupe. And, but one thought, earlier, I was just sort of throwing out the idea that you could perform this at a school, but a theme of the actors could be advice to younger people, like a musical theater of older adults talking about advice to younger people or things they wish they knew. that could be of great interest to a younger audience and a cool thing to perform in front of school children.
Especially if it's rooted in their experiences. Like, the reason I'm giving this advice is because I really screwed this thing up in my life years ago, or because I was really successful here.
Yeah.
Man, I'm telling you, there are so many, as we're sitting here chatting, there are just so many rabbit holes that you could go down where that would enable the same actors in a community to continue participating in this process and bringing more people. Now, out of curiosity, after this performance, were a lot of the residents in the audience sort of saying, wow, I should have signed up for that, or I'd like to participate?
One of the ladies who dropped out came up to me right after the show and said, I made a mistake. I'm really sorry I dropped out. I'll be back for the next one.
Now, do we know why she dropped out? Was it just she was uncomfortable with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Debbie.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yep. There were a couple of people who, and that, I think that's normal that happened. They were like, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for a drama group. You know, I want to play, do the I Love Lucy show and play Lucy. I don't want to play me.
Well, that's what's so pioneering about this. And that's actually, one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on, Robbie, is to inspire other communities to think about this. And now that we have this recording, it is an opportunity for folks to see that, hey, look, this other community did it. These people did it. If you're uncomfortable, this has been done before. And I mean, my vision for you, Robbie, I could see you bringing together many communities and coaching them through this process all over the country. I love it.
Great.
So, man, this is just, you all have made my day. This is one of the coolest discussions that I've had. And I just see so much benefits to this way of thinking in a community.
It was a real,
Thank you for having us, and you guys did a beautiful job, and it's our first webinar.
Thank you for having us, Steve.
All right. Okay. I hope to see you in July. I'm serious about that. I think I'm going to have to come up there.
Look forward to it.
We'd love to have you. And you're a cyclist, Steve, and I'm a cyclist too. So come up a couple hours early and we'll ride around Philly. And if there's anyone in the audience that wants to come on by, it's on July the 13th. I put my email in the chat, and they can email me, and love to have you.
And I'll have all that stuff on the recording. So, all right, folks. Well, we'll see you tomorrow at our next discussion. And thanks so much. And
Thank you, Steve.
You did a great job.
It was a fun